The moment Nathaniel Cole stepped into the restaurant, conversations died at every table. Waiters exchanged nervous glances and busboys suddenly found reasons to be somewhere else, because everyone at the Marlowe house in Boston knew exactly who he was, and exactly what happened to anyone who slowed him down. He was the only son of one of the city's most powerful real estate families, and for 2 years he had treated the restaurant like a stage for his temper, berating servers over lukewarm coffee, having a manager fired over a mispronounced wine. Moving through the world like warmth was something other people could afford, not him. Nobody held his gaze for more than a second. Nobody, except a new waitress named Emma Hale, who had just clocked in for her very first shift that Thursday night, with no idea she was about to change the course of his life. If a story about patience and second chances is already sitting with you, take a second to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who could use a little hope tonight, and subscribe to the channel, because we believe some of the coldest people are just waiting for someone to stay long enough to see why. Emma was 26, juggling 2 jobs to help cover her younger brother's hospital bills, and she'd already been warned twice before her apron was even tied. Keep your head down. Don't engage. Take the order and walk away, muttered Denise, a server who'd survived 5 years at the Marlowe house and still tensed every time the front door opened for him. But Emma had been raised by her grandfather in a small town outside Savannah, a man who used to say that anger was just grief that never found the right room to sit in. She didn't believe in cruel people. She believed in people who were still bleeding from something nobody had bothered to bandage. That night, Nathaniel sat at his usual corner table, jacket still on, jaw tight, one hand tapping the edge of the table in a rhythm that meant trouble. He corrected the sommelier twice. He sent the bread back untouched. The kitchen staff moved around him like the floor might crack. When it was Emma's turn to take his order, her pulse was hammering, but she walked over anyway, steady on the outside. What she did next made the whole dining room go quiet. Instead of rushing through the specials like every server before her, Emma paused, met his eyes without flinching, and asked, gently, like it was nothing, whether the small silver ring on his right hand had once belonged to someone he'd lost. For a moment, Nathaniel's whole face changed. Something cracked open behind his eyes, fast and involuntary, before he shut it down and told her, sharply, to bring his water and mind her business. But his voice wavered on the last word in a way it never had before. Emma didn't push. She smiled, wrote down his order, and walked away, but the air in that dining room had shifted, and even the staff who didn't understand why could feel it. Over the following weeks, Nathaniel kept coming back, always asking to sit in Emma's section, always testing her with sharper words and pettier demands, like he was daring her to finally snap the way everyone else eventually did. She never did. She learned he took his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar cube dropped in slow. She noticed he never touched anything with mushrooms and quietly told the kitchen. She never complained about him to the other staff, never once looked at him like he was something to survive. Little by little, without ever announcing it, Nathaniel began to loosen, a quiet thank you here, a few extra seconds of eye contact there. One cold February night, after closing, Emma found him still sitting at the bar, turning that same silver ring over in his fingers, and for the first time, she watched him cry. He told her the ring had belonged to his older sister, who died in a car accident when he was 14, and that his father, buried in grief and business deals, had never looked at him the same way again. He said that in his world, people either feared him or wanted something from him, and that he'd built his coldness like a wall because the one time he'd let it down, he lost the person who mattered most. He admitted that the name whispered behind his back at every gala, the ones who called him heartless, had become easier to wear than the truth, a boy who was never given the space to grieve. Emma sat down beside him, not as a waitress and a rich man's son, but as one person beside another, and told him softly that grief you bury doesn't disappear. It just waits for someone patient enough to notice it's still there. That night, for the first time in years, Nathaniel let someone see him without the armor. Word of their quiet friendship moved through the restaurant, and slowly, the tension that used to choke the room turned into something else, understanding. Nathaniel started showing up calmer, even helping train new hosts on slow nights, something no one on staff would have believed possible a season earlier. He quietly covered the cost of Emma's brother's surgery without telling a soul, no press, no announcement, because for the first time, he wanted to give something simply because he cared, not because anyone was watching. 5 months later, Nathaniel stood in front of the entire staff at a small end-of-year gathering and said something no one expected. He thanked Emma publicly, admitting that the cold, unreachable version of himself everyone feared had never been who he really was. It was a mask he built to survive a loss no one ever asked him about. He said Emma was the first person in years who looked past his name, his money, and his temper, and simply saw someone worth being patient with. If this story reached you even a little, if it reminded you that behind every hardened person there might be a story waiting to be understood, take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And before we go, tell me this in the comments, have you ever misjudged someone before you knew what they were carrying? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read tonight. In the end, Emma never set out to change Nathaniel's life. She simply chose patience when walking away would have been easier, and in doing so, she found something stronger than any name or fortune, a broken heart that only needed one person willing to stay long enough to watch it heal. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do isn't standing our ground. It's choosing gentleness when the whole world tells us to give up on someone.